Hello, Jeff Zwerenk again, back with Give and Take, the segment of our show where we look at scientific issues and how we can use those to build confidence in the truth of Christianity so that we can share it with others. Today, I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Ken Samples, and we're going to address the question, should Christians use science to defend the Christian faith? Ken, good to have you again here today.
Thank you, Jeff.
So this is something actually that, even before we get into the science, has a little bit of controversy, or at least it doesn't always sit well with some Christians. The idea that we're defending the faith or not just declaring the truth. So is this something that Christians ought to even be involved with, defending the faith, if you will?
Well, if you look at the New Testament, there are a number of passages that relate to the apostles either defending the faith or giving instruction to others to defend the faith. Probably the most important is 1 Peter 3:15, which is a mandate to do apologetics. Peter, writing to the church, says, always be ready to give to every man an answer, a reason for the hope that you have. So if undoubtedly in that time nobody's going to be asking about Big Bang cosmology because of being in the first century, but if they're asking questions, what if they ask a question about Platonism in Christianity, or they ask a question about, pagan morality? It seems Peter is telling us, be ready to talk about the faith and answer people's appropriate questions. In the 21st century, it's very normal and natural for somebody to ask, yeah, but is Christianity consistent with modern science? So the answer is yes.
So it seems like there's an aspect of apologetics that's just equipping you to be involved in the conversations that are going on. People are going to ask questions, and if you don't have answers to the questions, they may not want to engage with anything deeper than you, correct?
People are going to ask today about relativistic ethics or same-sex marriage. They're going to ask a variety of questions. We want to be able to engage them about the gospel and how Christianity fares in the public square.
In part, what seems like is going on there is that people are asking, is this true? Is this something worth listening to?
Yeah.
That, to me, I think, is a place where Christianity has a great advantage over every other worldview, is that I think it's the one that's best anchored in the truth. Going all the way back to the apostles, it seems like they're doing that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. People are asking, look, is Christianity true? Does the Christian worldview comport well with what we know about other areas? At Reasons to Believe, we talk about the two books, the book of Scripture, the book of nature. Does Scripture comport with the book of nature? For us, it's, Einstein and the Big Bang. For them, it may have been Aristotle and Plato.
So can you give any examples just out of Scripture so that this isn't just us making stuff up to make it feel like we got a good job here? Are there any examples in Scripture where the apostles are defending the faith, if you will?
Oh, yeah. A number of places. In the book of Acts, Paul goes into the synagogue, and on each Sabbath day, he's reasoning with the Jews from the Scriptures to show that Jesus is the Messiah. Then, later in the book of Acts, chapter 17, Paul is talking with the Greek philosophers, quoting their own writers, talking about the creation of the world. So we see the apostles defending the faith both within Judaism and among the Gentiles.
So let's kind of take that and turn it to science. I mean, at least for most of my life, if somebody says, well, hey, science says this, people will listen to what there's going on there. So when we're interacting with science, what are some of the issues there that we need to be aware of, and why should we use science to be a part of this defense?
Well, for me, I think that a very important part is that science kind of has a privileged status in our time. We think that science may be very narrowly focused, but it usually has very credible data and interpretation of the world. I think people naturally wonder, hey, I can trust science. How does science fit with what you're telling me about the world? And again, if I can relate it back to the apostles' time, when they talk about creation ex nihilo, partly they were critiquing a Platonic interpretation. When we talk about the universe having a beginning, we might want to contrast it with, a steady state theory or a multiverse showing that our view is credible. So I think science is a powerful and important enterprise. It has credibility. people naturally want to know, how does our faith relate to scientific knowledge?
Your answer there kind of has two aspects to what we're doing, especially when we're talking with the sciences. One is showing how the latest science actually comports with what the Bible has to say, but then also using that to push on ways that our people are trying to get around Christianity and what it has to say. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, I think we do both of those. I think we want to show that if God's the author of the book of the scriptural book, and he's the author of the book of nature, they're going to comport. There's going to be a consensus there. But there are other people, obviously, who come along and say, hey, wait a second, I don't have to buy that interpretation. There is another interpretation. I think we want to be able to enter that discussion and say, no, I think the Christian view has greater explanatory power.
So when we look at science, one thing as a scientist that I find, and I'm going to throw out a thought for you and get your assessment of it, is that when I read Scripture, I don't get to go in and say, well, I really like John, I like the Proverbs, and I like Revelation, so I'm going to focus on those three. I need to read all of it to get God's revelation, if you will. Well, as I understand it, God has revealed himself in creation as well. So if we neglect using science, in some sense, we're missing part of God's revelation. Does that have a part in our defense, our apologetics, if you will?
Yeah, I think, people come at life differently. But in the 21st century, science, technology, medicine, these are areas that are very significant. We believe the enterprise of science leads us to credible knowledge about reality. We're going to come at it from different points of view. Some people want to know, how does Christianity relate to other religions or literature or philosophy or things like that. But yeah, we want to bring the various parts of Scripture together, and we want to look at the various parts of the book of nature as well. And science is right at the top of the list, I think, in our age.
Well, thanks, Ken. I appreciate your comments. When we look at Christianity, one of the things that separates Christianity from almost every other world religion is that it's based on the truth. And as we go and explore the truth, especially as we look at how God has revealed himself in creation and what science can tell us about how this world works, we develop a great set of tools that equips us to go out and share that truth with the people that God has put around us. I would encourage you to go check out Ken's blog, The Christian Apologetics Mandate, so that you can understand the reason why we want to defend our faith and how we can use that to go share the gospel with those God has put in our path.